they were putting kids who were like me, that looks like me, into schools for kids with who were subnormal. They called it subnormal. It's all well and good talking about what you want, but you need to do something towards it. Otherwise, it's just a delusion. So I don't believe that you just say, be confident to someone. That's crap. I always say to the kids, play the movie to the end. You know, before you decide to do that, just play the movie to the end. What do you think is going to happen if you continue this way? If you're anti-AI because you're worried about jobs, I can see if you're a lawyer, I just think you need to. Right, okay. So my name is Chris Cummins, and I've known you guys. Well, actually, Michael, I've known you. It's our 11th year anniversary. Did you know that?
Oh,
Well, you should remember
flattering.
because you are a memory expert, right? So actually, it was 11 years ago when I met you in London, and you were helping the French team um, with the translation, and I was running one of Richard's, what do they call them, stations, right,
Yeah.
on state. And actually, they said to me afterwards, we didn't need the translator because of my crazy actions the whole time. But they did really, Michael. So yeah, that was fine. So that's well, and obviously, Natalie, we have known each other since even before that. It was probably no around the same time, I think,
Yeah.
maybe a year or so before, or maybe even the same year
It
in
was March
March.
2016.
Yeah, there we go. Right, so roughly around the same time. Right, how amazing! And you at the time you were both not together, but now you are. But I have no part in that manifestation. Okay, I'm just telling you that. All right. Go
Actually,
on.
I'm super super excited today because both of you, I met both of you
Yeah,
at the same time.
that's right.
And
Exactly.
both of you are the two men that changed completely my life.
I cannot believe that. Well, I can believe the bit with Michael, right, but I'm not sure how I've done that.
Absolutely gorgeous to have
Ah,
met both of you. So I'm very, very lucky today because, well, Chris is proof that past doesn't define your purpose and it prepares you for it.
And let's go for that presentation about.
I won't consider myself to be a stereotype. Very often people see a black guy and, you know, they tell you a hard luck story about how tough life was and blah, 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 blah. And then they became famous with some kind of talent. That kind of didn't really happen for me. Although maybe when I look at other people's lives, then I think, oh, maybe it was quite tough. But it never felt tough, right?
Mhm.
And actually, I put down the skills that I have obtained. I really attribute them to my mother and my father, right? They were NLP experts and they didn't realize it. My mother is still a fantastic hypnotist, right? Although she would never tell you that she is. She's probably one of these people that thinks hypnosis is evil, but she's been doing it all her life, right? And my father, God rest his soul, one of the things that he was brilliant at was adapting to an environment, right? So I think I picked those two skills up, and that kind of helped me to get to a point where this kind of manifestation thing has become something. So Michael, I will go back even before that, right?
Yeah.
So let me give you an example. When I was a kid, my parents, when I was at school, and it was a very long time ago, uh, I'll tell you the story. They were putting kids who were like me, that looks like me, into schools for kids with who were subnormal. They called it subnormal. I even have a book behind me, which basically in the 1960s there was a chap, a couple of scientists who basically continue this kind of supremacy medical idea that black people are inferior. But you still see this if you just watched all the football. Then you would have seen there's some crazy stuff happening, right? I won't mention the countries or anything, right? But the whole point was my parents were like, and actually there were some of my peers, and they have never recovered from this, by the way, right? Were put into schools where basically the teachers were just kind of holding you there. And also it was with kids who did have either mental or physical disabilities, right? So they put black kids of my age and slightly older into those schools.
Wow.
So, and I was super bright, right? I had a really good memory. I still have, and not as good as yours, Michael. But I was I just remember, I could remember all the names, all the capital cities of every country in the early 19th. So 1971, 72. If you asked me what the capital of Bolivia was, I'm like, straight away, right? I was like it. You know, I would read stuff in minutes. And actually, I got in trouble at school because my school teacher didn't believe that I read. There was a book called the Wide Range Reader Book, right? And it was, we didn't have a TV, okay? All my other friends had a TV, and there was me and another guy called Clive Spence, right? I don't know where he is now, but anyway, we didn't have a TV, and I would read that 144-page book in a night. Whereas all the other kids were taking like about 3 weeks to read the book. They'd read one story, then the next story. I'd read them all. And Clive and I, every day, would say, "Oh, we finished, miss. Can we have another book?" And she's like, "No." And then she would spend probably 20 minutes of the lesson asking us, "So what happened in story number 4? What about story?" And we'd tell them, and she'd be like, so she would then give us another book, and we'd read, right? And so why am I telling you about this? Basically, I was in a school where it was full of rich kids because it was a private school. So you had to pay to go there, right? And so my mum did 2 jobs, right? And my dad did 1 job for a very long time, right? And so I went to the school, and the manifestation thing started to happen at that point because we were nowhere near. I mean, these kids, they lived in massive houses, and they'd say, "Oh, Chris is your friend. Bring him round for, you know, for overnight stay or sleepover, little things like that." And I was like, I'd go to their houses, I'd be like, they've got a bathroom inside the house, right? They've got a shower, right? They've got a living room and a dining room. They've got, look at their car. I'd actually say to my mum, please don't park outside the school with that car. She's like, what do you mean? And I'm like, no. They've all got BMWs and Mercedes, right? So the thing was, little did I realize what I was doing. I was slowly programming myself, because I kept thinking, when I grow up, I'm going to have a house like that. I'm going to drive a car like that. I'm going to do that, right? So, and so in my mind, it was already formed. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
So then years later, it was no surprise to me that I was driving, you know, I was like 29. I was a national sales manager for a big pharmaceutical company. I'd already got my degree, you know, all this kind of stuff. And basically, you know, I kind of looked and thought, oh, okay, now I'm kind of like everyone else, you know. So that, I guess that kind of gives you it was almost like my parents pushed me away from bad situations, but then I was kind of looking and thinking, well, they're behind. Look at these parents. So I thought, I really want to be like them, if those parents, if that makes sense. When I grow up, I want to be like that. So then how did I end up getting to that way? So I don't know if there are any other thoughts or questions you want to ask before I carry on the
I'm
story.
really curious, how do you understand the concept of manifestation? What do you put behind it?
Yeah, really good question. And it's interesting because there's something you just said there. What did you put behind it?
Yeah.
So for me, it's about having a propulsion engine.
Uh-huh.
Right? Now, I have to tell you, sometimes my propulsion engine, before I understood the NLP, it didn't stop. It just kept going.
Yeah.
Right? And so that hasn't helped me in my life. But now I've learned about Ikigai. Well, not now, about 20 years ago, I learned about Ikigai and also the Wheel of Life. I have the Wheel of Life right next to me. You can't see it, but I could pull it and show you it. And so I try and manifest things in a full circle fashion rather than just I want rich things, because to me, actually, I'm not interested in material possessions so much. If that makes sense. But when you don't have it, when I was a kid, and it was embarrassing not to have it because everyone else had it, then that's pretty much all you're wishing for. Do you know what I mean? You're right at the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So you're like trying to get your way up, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I don't know whether that's properly answered your question, but there was definitely a propulsion engine behind what I wanted. All right? So
And
go on.
you say that you worked in pharmaceutical and you were very successful, and you didn't stop. And then what happened for you that changed that mindset of just going for the big house and the big car? And
Right.
what happened for
So
you?
can I show you the Wheel of Life?
Please.
Right. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to find the Wheel of Life and share it on the screen. Okay.
Okay.
Because I don't know how many of your group know about the Wheel of Life. If everybody knows about it, that's great. But I'm just going to very, very quickly find it, and then we can really talk about what I did. But actually, you know what I did? I read a book, right? Called Think and Grow Rich. Now, and I've got to tell you, one of the things I have always done is read. Okay. I've been a reader. Well, obviously, most people read, right? But I'm a prolific reader. I probably get through 4 or 5 books a week, right? And I thought that was normal for everybody, but I've now realized that it's not, right? And in fact, a lot of people are doing stuff and they're not and they're wondering why they're struggling to be inspired, right? And it's because very often I just think they're not finding the right material to inspire themselves, right? So I've got the Wheel of Life here, so let me just show you. And this is one that we all know from our good friend Alessio, right?
Yeah.
There you go, Wheel of Life, life coaching, whatever. So on here, what you've got, and you can put anything on here, and actually with kids, it's even better because you can put homework, you can put, PE, you can put your subjects on here. But for grown-ups, we've got things like career, money, health, friends and family, romance, significant other, personal growth, fun and recreation, and physical environment. And you can see there are a little scale here from 1 to 10. And actually, you can decide what. So, for example, I might look at this and say I run 2 companies. I feel, and actually one of them is running itself. So, career 9. So I put a 9 on there, and on this tiny little cake piece, I would call that 9. And then I may look at money and go, oh, really, would want more money, so that might be a 5. And then
Yeah.
this is all about.
Let me just
Go on,
specify one thing.
go on.
When you put a 9 is the level of satisfaction
Yes,
that you
yes,
have.
yeah.
So it's not you achieved
No,
a 9,
no.
so it's your level of satisfaction, right?
Yes, I was
Okay.
literally going to say that. It's like how
Thank you.
satisfied I am about where I am. So it
Yeah,
just gives you a kind of it's all very subjective, but it helps to give you a scale, right? So you
absolutely.
go all the way through, and obviously, when you look at it, not everything is going to be the same, and you'll end up with a wheel which is a little bit wonky. So if you had a car with 4 wheels that were shaped the way your wheel of life is, the big question is, could you drive it? And normally the answer is no, right? Not very far. So what is the aim of this? Well, really, it's to help you decide how much you want to grow each of these things. Now, before, and this brings me back to that point, I was just focusing on money, and that was it,
Yeah.
right? Maybe physical environment, which would be a house. Okay. So the challenge with doing that, of course, is that you end up burning yourself out, which is what happened to me when I was 29 years old.
Yeah.
I was watching. I've been promoted. I was now in charge of the whole UK. I remember saying that to my friend, and he said, "What? You're the prime minister, right?" So, but in my mind, I was national sales manager for a pharmaceutical company. And I said, yeah, I'm in charge of the whole UK. And he was just laughing. What, you're the prime minister, mate? That kind of thing. And actually, just that was good enough for me to realize, yeah, see, I'm taking too much on my shoulders
Yeah.
and not actually thinking about things better.
Mm.
So I told you I read this book, Think and Grow Rich.
Mhm.
And there was a chapter in there which talked about the unconscious mind,
Yes.
programming the unconscious mind. And actually, most grown-ups don't really understand the power of their unconscious mind till they reach about 50, that kind of age, right? So I was thinking, oh, I'm 27, 28. If I can understand the unconscious mind now, I've got 20 years on there. Fantastic, right? So I started doing things like writing down affirmations,
Uh-huh.
okay? Things and some things started to come true. It's just some, not everything. Some things started to come true. And then I discovered NLP, right? I didn't discover it. I mean, I went on a training, right? and things changed, okay? But anyway, I'll stop talking now. And tell me another question.
Yeah, I'm very curious because you said with your affirmations, some of them became reality. What do you think makes the difference between those that become reality and those that don't? So what are the conditions for manifestation to work
Right.
according to you?
So I will tell you straight, the conditions for me, um, I'll tell you in a story format, shall I?
Yes, please.
So I was an athlete when I was a kid. I was trying to do everything just to get better, just to get to university. In my mind, my parents said, go to school, work hard, get qualifications, go to university, and then life will be perfect. You'll get a job and everything will be fine, right? So, and to a certain degree, they were right, right? But I was a really good athlete. I was running in national competitions at the age of 14. So I had a coach, and my coach was the first person to really teach me about manifesting things and visualizing things and quieting the voice and all that. Basically, she was teaching me NLP, and I didn't realize. Okay, so so she would say, okay, Chris, you need to take 0.6 seconds off your time for the 100 meters, which to you might think, but actually that's the difference between winning gold and being left behind or not being in the team, right? So at the age of 14, I was the captain of the school athletics team. So I was already in charge of the sixth formers. That's, you know, the whatever they call them in Switzerland, but the guys who were just about to go to university, and I wasn't even doing my first exams yet, right?
Wow.
So what had happened was my coach taught me to imagine the finishing line, right? And also to step in to this perfect running Chris, right? This Chris who basically I wasn't, right? And so she got me to do that when I wasn't actually physically practicing. She got me to keep thinking about it over and over and over again. And of course, I smashed that record that year, and it got me thinking, oh, if I could do this with running, which is, well, it's quite hard, but I had a talent, right? Maybe I could do it with my schoolwork.
Yeah.
So then I started doing the same with my schoolwork, and I started imagining myself passing the exams, right? And I'm not saying I was perfect. I mean, I was 14-year-old teenage boy. You know what that's like, right?
Yeah.
So I was doing this, you know, sometimes I did it, sometimes I didn't. Sometimes I did it, sometimes I didn't, right? And then, but I still managed to get to university. First person in my family to do that, right? And then I went to, I got a job after university. And after that, that's when I started really focusing on manifestation, right? So I got my first job as a medical rep, right? And I was working around London, driving around in those, and you have to go and convince the doctor to use your product without actually giving them the product. They just have to remember. So you're really doing hypnosis. You have to really be really good at post-hypnotic suggestions so that they can remember. And I realized after the first 3 months, they weren't remembering anything, right? So, and I thought, looking like me, there were no other reps that looked like me. So I thought they're bound to remember me, but they didn't because they're having hundreds of conversations every day. So I started focusing on thinking about just one thing that I'm going to say to them in that call and imagining them actually delivering the thing. So when I was talking to them, I started doing post-hypnotic suggestions, although I didn't know they were. I was saying, so when you find that patient, right, the one that looks like this, and this, and has these conditions, don't even consider doing it, do it, right? And this goes back to what you just mentioned, Michael, and that's about about manifestation. It's all well and good talking about what you want, but you need to do something towards it. Otherwise, it's just a delusion.
Yeah.
Okay. So I started writing cards down. Okay. And I started writing cards, and basically, when I wrote the cards down, I wrote them as if the thing had happened. Right?
So at the moment it happens, or later when it's already happened and it's already a because you know, for instance, if we think about money, sometimes people they just think about the moment they earn it. And some say, no, that's not the right way to do it. The best way is to put yourself even further in time when you're already in that situation where the high emotion is already settled down, when it's more peaceful. So how do you envision that?
So that was basically the latter. So basically, that's what I did. So, and in fact, I have just in my drawer here, I have hundreds of cards from things where I've already achieved. I mean, I cannot believe some of these. Oh, look, I'll read this one to you and you'll laugh.
Go ahead.
Wasn't it amazing that OTD
Well,
gained?
OTD is your company, just
Yeah,
for
one of so that's the company which stands for our training department. Wasn't it amazing that OTD gained an extra £1,000 worth of business by the end of March 2010. Now, this sounds ridiculous, right? Now, it may or may not. But now, I mean, this business turns over a lot more than that every month. Significantly, you know, add another 2 zeros, right? Every month. I mean, by far, right? But, you know, these are things I've got. Look, you can look at all these cards, right?
But look at the colorful, the wellness that you put in the cards.
Yeah. So I'll
Just
explain
amazing.
all of this. So I'll explain it in minute detail, okay?
Yes, please.
So basically, so what I started doing was writing down statements as if the thing had already happened. So it doesn't matter, month, I would sit down, so I would probably do, so if you think about it, on the Wheel of Life, there are 8 categories.
Yeah.
So for each category, I would write 3 to 5 cards. Okay? So for example, with health, I have some, so I would say 4 years ago, I was 87 kilos, right? And you might think, oh, okay, but I'm not 2 meters tall, right? Okay. So, and I'm also closer to 60 than 50, okay? So actually, when I went to the doctors, they said, oh, you're 87 kilos, you're obese, right? They also said your blood sugar is very high, so you're almost diabetic. You have your cholesterol is kind of slightly higher than normal. So would you like a statin? Would you like a blood pressure tablet? Blah, blah, blah. And I was thinking, I've sold those for years when I was a rep. No, I don't. Because normally what they do is, when we would ask the doctors, what do you do when the customer comes in or patient comes in like that? And they said, first we give them lifestyle advice. But they didn't do that. They just said, you know, they didn't even ask me what I ate or anything. They just said, would you like these things? You're nearly that age now. And I said, no. I'll solve it myself. So within 6 months of writing some cards down, obviously I did something, right? But within 6 months of writing those cards, and within a year and a half, well, now I am 60. This morning I weighed myself 68 kilos, right? So basically, and that's now the right size for myself. And actually, I have muscles, I have a 6-pack, all kinds of things that at that time I did not have. I posted a picture of me yesterday with somebody, and it was in 2012, 2013, and you could already see me puffing out and getting bigger and bigger. At that point, my belly was starting to show, right? So that is an example of the manifestation, which has probably added a number of years to my life as long as I don't do anything stupid, right? But I would write things like, wasn't it amazing how healthy I felt by the end of 2020? You know, my running time was great, my mobility was excellent, and my body looked like I was 25 years old. Right? Does that make sense? So I've written it all in the past tense. And obviously your conscious mind is thinking, this is stupid. But your unconscious mind is looking for ways to make it happen. Right? And so eventually I changed my diet. I found a book called How Not to Die, right? By this doctor. And he talked about all the different things that basically are slowly killing us, right? And also, plus I went on a really nice exercise regime, and all of this was part of my manifestation cards, right? And if you think about it, the reason why you might say, why do you need like 28, 30 cards? And I sit and I read them every morning. So I'll sit down and I'll read them. It's in a nice, relaxed style. It's almost like my own meditation. So I
Yeah.
read them first, and then I go for a run every morning. Okay,
Mm.
and basically, that has completely changed my life over 20 years. Completely. Right. So health wise, and then the other thing is, as soon as you achieve one of the things where you can see I put them all in a drawer,
Yeah.
right? Because one day I'll just look back and just laugh and kind of go, I cannot believe in 2010 I was hoping to make £1,000 a month with OTD's training,
Yeah.
right? So you can see the impact that this has, but it also means things like with friends and family, I will make the effort
Yeah.
to go and see them because it's one of those things that I think, oh, who do I need to see, on a regular basis that I'm probably not giving enough time to. Do you see what I mean?
Mm.
Yeah, and that's also a question that I want to ask you. How do you find balance in that wheel of life to achieve everything and to do what's important,
Yeah,
in not just in work wise or health wise, but there are also all kinds of other things, and
yeah,
we
yeah,
only have 24 hours per day. So
yeah, that's
how
right.
do you manage to be present in every in every aspect of your wheel of life, and how do you manage to balance it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think the balancing bit is the bit where you're really focusing your unconscious mind. The cards can really help you with that. So with each of those trying wedges in the
Yes.
wheel of life, I will focus on what is missing,
Yeah.
Hmm.
right? Because, like I said, I'm a living, breathing person. Things have happened, and I will look at this every 6 months, the
Mm.
wheel, and see where am I at, right? So, for example, with significant other romance, so it's 20 years wedding anniversary the other day, and we went to Marrakesh.
Congratulations.
And so, but I'd already written down on the cards that I wanted to go somewhere. Last year we went to Italy, right? And we had a lovely time. In fact, I called Alessandro because it was not far from where he lived. And he said, oh, this is a great place. Go here, go here, go. So we did Alessandro's trip, right?
Wow.
But then so for me, it's like, then we start talking when we're away. Should we do this more? Let's do this more often. And then so in my goals, I'm now writing down, wasn't it amazing how we were able to do 4 trips in the year?
Yeah.
And then your brain is like, how can I do 4? How can I do 4? How can I do? And things start happening and you start meeting people.
Yeah.
And that's basically how you end up getting the balance. You don't try and do everything. You may have just 2 or 3 cards, 3 or 4 cards for each thing. And if you read it I read it every day. And even and if I have a day where I think, oh, wasn't that productive, I'll read them again at night before I go to bed. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't trust that, things are going to keep, what it means is I'm really putting my unconscious mind to work to
Yeah.
specifically have a balanced life.
Yeah. And I'm really curious with this because, in fact, you said that with manifestation, it's very important to act, also to do things. But sometimes there are some internal aspects that can inhibit us from acting or from truly believing what we're visualizing, like fears or beliefs, for instance.
Yeah.
How do you connect this with NLP? So how did NLP help you increase or improve manifestation?
Well, hanging around Dr. Bandleth all the time and people like you guys kind of helps. We've all got limiting beliefs. We all have fears. I very often people go, you're not afraid of anything, are you? And I'm like, well, not really. I think probably because of my age, it might be so, and that's a belief in itself. I remember my boss, Japanese guy, many years ago, it was about 20 years ago, and he said, "You're not scared of." This 25, and he said, "You're not scared of anything." And I was like, You don't seem to be afraid of anything, Chris. And I'm like, well, not anything in work. What's the worst that will happen? The people will either say no or say you're incompetent. So why are you getting worried about it? So I don't. I really don't worry about that. I guess to answer your question, Michelle, I'm just thinking it's the limiting. So there's a thing that I've got from a chap called Dan Sullivan, right? And he calls it the 4 C's. I don't know whether you've heard of this before, but I'll clarify for you.
Okay.
So the first C is making a commitment to something. So for me, the commitment happens on those cards. Once I've written it, I'm like hung by the tongue. I have to, if I'm reading it every day, I'll be an idiot to not do it, right, in the long run, right? But then the next C is the tough one. It's called courage.
Yeah.
And this is where your beliefs and action kind of are an intersect, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right? And there's lots of reasons for me to, I could throw loads of excuses up all the time, like racism, ageism. There's lots of isms where you could just say that will give you a reason to just stay at home and do nothing,
Yeah.
right? But for me, I'm like, well, I'll be the first person to do it then if, do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So that is my filter all the time. It's not, I mean, I still have the fear, but I'm like, yeah, but I'll still have a go and do it,
Yeah.
right? And then once you've done it, then you think, oh, I can do that. So that brings you to the next C, which is the capability.
Okay.
So before the courage situation, you might not be able to speak French, for example. And then you say to someone, bonjour, and they say bonjour back, and you're like, we are communicating. Courage to say that. They've said something back. I now have the capability. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then that gives you confidence.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So I don't believe that you just say, be confident to someone. That's crap. Right?
Yeah.
Because as you know, deep down inside, they're still not feeling confident. So you've got to do something to help that. And normally it's building a new skill or building a capability. And then you're like, tick, I can do that. So next time the situation arises, I love this one when Dr. Bandler is helping this guy overcome the fear of snakes. Michael Strachan.
Michael Strahan.
Yeah. And then at the end, he says, I'm going to Central Park looking
And
for
I'm
snakes.
looking for snakes. Yes.
Yeah. So now he's built a capability.
Yeah.
And now he's confident. You know, before that, he was like scared of snakes.
Yeah.
So for me, I use the same process all the time for new situations, right? And then what happens is I don't look afraid in front because I've already started to build. I'm like, this is my courage moment now.
Yeah.
And then I get myself into a good state, deal with it. And then after that, I'm like, I've done it. New thing,
And I really think that that's one very important ingredient that you have, you Chris particularly. You are always in a good mood. I have never seen you, ever seen you not happily doing everything that you do. And so that Richard Bandler always is bringing you on stage to every time that he needs someone that has this power, that energy, that heart, that good vibe, you're always in a good mood. And I think that's your power, your secret. And how do you do that?
Oh, I'm not always in a good mood. Remember, I support Arsenal
I have
Football Club.
always seen you.
Yeah, I know. It's so funny because a couple of weeks ago, Richard was in London, right?
Yes.
And Tina asked me to, basically meet him at the car because she was driving him from the hotel and then take him into into
The room.
the room and then make him and Glenda feel happy and everything, right? So on the first day, I went early. I left early. He's like, "Where's Chris?" And Tina said, "Oh, he's gone to the Champions League final, right?" So I went to the Arsenal Stadium to sit with everybody else. We lost on penalties, and actually, we shouldn't have won that match anyway. PSG is fantastic, man. They're a good team. We were just like ridiculous. But anyway, so I was not happy, right? I'm telling you now, I wasn't happy. But the whole thing, I literally, as soon as the last penalty was missed, I went. And they're like, "Chris, where are you going?" I'm like, "Oh, God." And then the next day, I'm now bringing Richard in. And he said, "I heard Arsenal lost yesterday." And he said, "You're still happy?" And I'm like, "Look, Richard, let me explain to you why I'm still happy. I already knew we were going to lose in one way. So you always say disappointment takes adequate planning. So I'd already planned. If anything went wrong, I was not going to be upset, right?
Yeah.
So I guess that's one of the tools I use a lot, you know. And it's really interesting. I think my background over the years is, I mean, I'm talking about when I was a kid. Very often people would let us down. You think you had food this week and you didn't. Lots of little things. And that kind of, my parents never looked depressed about anything, even though we didn't live, a fantastic life. And I think that's helped me now because I watch people get upset over the tiniest thing.
Yeah.
Right? Now, my unconscious response will still be, or grr, or, but that's just for a split second. I let that out and then I carry on my life,
Yeah.
And actually, look at this. Can you see this?
Daily stoic.
Yeah. Daily stoic.
Right? So this is every day is like meditations on wisdom, right? And it has one for every single day, and these are all the stuff from Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, all of these great philosophers. And for me, context is everything.
Yeah.
Right? And there's another great guy that I love, and it's Robert Sapolsky. I don't know if you've read any of his stuff.
No.
Genius guy. Just look him up on YouTube, right? He's written a book called Behave, right? And he tells you, he always says, before judging a situation, take yourself back to 1 minute before, 1 hour before, 100 years before, 200,000 years before, right? And then things will look a lot different for you.
Yeah.
Right? So that's another reason why I'm normally in a good mood. But with football, I'm not. I can tell you now, right? Never call me after Arsenal have lost, especially when it's a controversial decision.
It's interesting when you say with this idea of looking at the situation 1 hour, 1 day, 1 year, 100 years before. It's about visualization, right?
Absolutely.
And how do you understand visualization? Because some people consider it's only visual, as the word says. Some people said that it's you have to have multiple channels, like auditory, kinesthetic. Some people just say that only one channel is enough. How do you envision that?
Well, it's really, I don't know whether I've got some kind of weird gift, right? But, for me, I look, it's not visual, it's everything. It's all the senses. It's like a dog. I don't know. I don't know about you, but when people are walking down the road, I am already sensing good energy or not so good energy. I'm sensing all kinds of things, whether they're really upset deeply or whether they're all right or they're not even thinking, So all of this, I don't know. I'm like some kind of receiving set, right? But I've purposely turned that on. So then that helps me internally to create whatever movie I want to create. I always say to the kids, play the movie to the end. You know, before you decide to do that, just play the movie to the end. What do you think is going to happen if you continue this way? So I've got movies, and of course, movies aren't silent movies anymore, are they? They've got sound, they've got color, you can almost touch the thing and things are coming at you. All kinds of weird stuff goes on. And so that, for me, that is my visualization is very, very clear, you know? So hopefully that answers your question, Michel.
Yeah. It's yeah. I wanted to use that as an introduction for another topic, because at the beginning you were talking about hypnosis.
Yeah.
Some people are kind of afraid of hypnosis, that it's influence, it's manipulation. How do you handle those kind of ideas, and what's your vision about hypnosis?
Well, it's really interesting because if you're watching a TV, you're being hypnotized anyway.
Yeah.
If you listen to the same radio station for 3 hours, right, you will have the same opinions of those people on the radio station. That's hypnosis, right? Most of us have had some people tell us bad things, and it's really given us a visceral feeling that you can bring back at any moment, right? You know, that's hypnosis. Sometimes people have told us some fantastic things. I see it on LinkedIn. People go, yeah, it was this guy told me this thing when I was 11 years old, and that propelled me to being successful. That's hypnosis. So, and just walking, we have to walk with hypnosis, right? It's an unconscious activity. Driving is hypnosis. How many times do you see people like this in the car, you know? It's hypnosis. But if you arrive at a destination, you think, how did I get here? Hypnosis, right?
Yeah.
So I think once people understand that it's actually just focusing on one thing to the exclusion of everything else, then it doesn't feel like it's weird, you know? All you need to do is take a photo of people at the beginning of a 100 meters race.
Yeah.
They are not running 100 meters consciously. They would fall at the first 10 meters, right? It's all unconscious. All that training they've done for 4 years in the Olympics, whatever, you know, it's all happening. You can't even hear the crowd. When I was an athlete, I couldn't hear my mum shouting unless she was on the finish line going like that, you know. I couldn't hear anything. You're just focused. All you can hear is the wind, the other people's breathing, you know, and that's it as you're running. So hopefully, Michel, that answers your question, does it?
Yes.
Yeah, it's not, for me, it's part of life, and it's really just concentrating on one thing to the exclusion of everything else. So, you know, and it's an amazing tool to use.
Yeah. And I'm curious, Chris, because you talk about what your parents prompt you as a child, and they were always in a good mood, even though things didn't work out as they wanted to. But what do you give to your own kids, because you are the father of teenagers, and you have twins, and you have all kinds.
I have grandsons as well. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. So what is the influence?
This is really interesting. So I can tell you the positive ones and the maybe not so positive ones, right? So the positive ones are, you know, study hard at school, you know, make the most of all the things that you've got around you. And remember, our generation, between us and our kids, some really tough things have happened to them, like the invention of this, right? The iPhone, right? Which is a massive game changer for the whole planet. And then putting likes, buttons on there, then creates this external validation that none of us had to worry about when we were growing up, because the phones were attached to the wall and we left the house and no one knew where we were until we got back home, right? So actually, there are some good things I've done and with Kate, my wife, to really get them focused and doing really good things and bringing out their talents. But there's also some bad things I've done over the years. And I wish I didn't have to do this, but I've told my boys, for example, be very careful when you're on the street because you will not get the same treatment by the police if you are rude, right? So, keep away from them, all that kind of stuff, because bad things can happen to you because bad things happen to me and my friends. So, of course, some of those things I've told them to the point where they're almost terrified when the police are anywhere near us now. So that's bad anchoring, if you want. But I know that if my kids are with a bunch of kids and there's trouble, my kids will think, oh, I don't want to be part of this, right? Because certainly my life has been saved a few times by my parents also telling me things like that, right? It's hard for other people to understand because they don't have to worry about it. But, you just go online and watch, what happens to people when they argue back sometimes. So I suppose that's the positive side is our kids are well behaved.
They are
right?
fantastic.
And then, but not just well behaved, they are lovely. It's lovely being around them. It's the summer vacation now. It's great being with them, right? And they're normal teenagers, so they do sit on their phones all day and all that kind of stuff. But they talk to people.
Yes.
And they're interested in people.
I was seeing a post that some days ago that you brought one of your kids to work.
Yeah.
He was dressed in an OTD, I think,
Yeah.
shirt or something.
I was so proud of him.
Yeah.
So yeah. And I didn't, you know what? He came to a couple of my meetings, but the rest of the day he was with everybody else, and they all said he was a delight. And sometimes I meet other kids, and of course we're all always biased about our own kids, right? But I meet other kids and they don't say hello to you or they won't speak to you, and then you can see the parents all getting nervous because that I don't have to worry about that. So, and I know that's going to set them up for life. That's more important than getting your school exams, and we all know that, right? If you can talk to people, good things can happen to you if you have a good mindset. So. Yeah. So hopefully that's answered that question.
Yeah. So you talked about the telephone, about revolution. There is another revolution coming now, which is AI. And since you're in the training business, what is your vision about how the world is going to evolve with that, especially in the training business?
It's really interesting because what I've seen is what I love John Naval. Like when John Naval does stuff about how people deal with change. And then he says about his dad and his dad, what was it? It was the tie or something. We have or the badge. We've had the same badge for 25 years. Why are we changing it now? That kind of thing, right? And then you've got other people who can change just a little bit. I listened to a guy yesterday and he says, yeah, I have the same food at different restaurants all over the world. I always choose lasagna or whatever it was. And I'm like, oh, John, I wish John was here now. It was like he was going through that meta program, And so what's really interesting from my perspective is I love change, right? I don't love it to the point where I want to foist it on everybody else, but I know I can adapt. So actually it was Alexander, as you know, right, from Slovenia, who showed me ChatGPT, right, a few years back. And I was like, whoa, this is amazing, right? And then I started to think, how could I use this, right? And so for me, if you're asking my opinion, then I would say, as with all new things, there's good and there's bad. So, for example, I was at a lecture the other day and the guy said in the last year, 97,000 jobs have been lost just in the UK with AI. But he said 110,000 have been created.
Of course.
So, for me, I think in some ways it's a leveler in terms of social class, You know, if you got a laptop or a phone and you can use one of these tools, it can save you hours,
Yes.
right? I also know that there's an environmental issue in terms of the amount of water that's being used every time you do this, which my children told me about because I didn't realize. I was just like, I'm doing a poem about Arsenal in 5 seconds, or I'm writing a proposal which would have taken me a whole day to write, and now I can do it in 30 seconds, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it has changed quite a lot. We've instituted a lot of, we've got our own AI
Yes.
within my OTD business and at Baseline, because even our app has got an AI function on it, and that asks you to, you can do lots of things. You can search for things on the app with it. It also gives us insights. So instead of me analyzing all the data, it basically tells you what needs to change, which will then give people the opportunity to make that change. So I really, in a nutshell, think if you're anti-AI because you're worried about jobs, I can see if you're a lawyer, I just think you need to it's time for you to change your industry. So for
Yes.
training, a lot of people are now retiring because, they don't want to get too heavily involved in the AI. But I was one of these people that watched, there was a program in the UK when I was growing called Tomorrow's World. Right? And every week it would have new inventions on there. I was addicted to that program when I was a kid, right? So I'm always interested in what's the new thing, what's
Yes.
happening, how can I get it sorted within my business, you know? So the customers are before the customers ask, you can say, we've got our own version of that. Would you like it'd be cheaper than using, the off the shelf? Would you like that? So I'm always looking for ways to have a cutting edge.
Yeah.
And again, I write that in the cards.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Mm.
Uh,
Okay.
you mentioned your app.
Yes.
So I would love you to share with us what's your app about, and yeah, go for it.
Yeah, okay. So again, this is all about data, and I don't know what it's like in Switzerland, but in the UK we have the population of people who look like me
Mm-hmm.
is just it's 3% of the population, right? So it's not a very large number. You'll see us in sports and music and all the stereotypical things, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I was a sports person and I used to DJ, right? So sports and music's in my DNA too, right? But it's in yours too. So, but these are areas where people who look like me have excelled for centuries because it's sometimes the only way you can make your way up, right? But I never really wanted to do that. I never wanted to be a stereotype. I wanted to look someone in the eye in business, shake their hand, they shake mine and think, this guy, he's brilliant at training, or he's a fantastic sales rep, or he's a brilliant manager, right? Irrespective of what he looks like, because this is my view on life, right? The only challenge is not everyone believes the same, right? I mean, after the George Floyd murder, there was a lot of hand wringing and people saying, "What can we do to help people?" and all that. That's all gone away
Mm-hmm.
now. But at the time, people were asking the question, and I was thinking, well, I don't want other people helping us. We need to just help ourselves.
Yeah.
So then I sat down with a couple of friends who are a bit like me, they've already been established in their own careers and done okay. And I was thinking, what can we do? Because really the problem isn't about a lack of capability or lack of talent.
Mm.
It's just about a lack of access and opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we sat down and we were just talking about it. And I said, imagine if we could find just 100 people who would look like us and were already successful and they didn't know how to give back.
Yeah.
And so we started thinking, and then I started thinking, we could have like an app, like a dating app. I've still got the notes from that meeting all those years back. And it would be like, if you want to, if you're an engine, if you're studying engineering or you want to be an engineer, but you've got no one in your, a lot of people will say, oh yeah, such and such dad's an engineer. I'll give them a call. And then all of a sudden, they're being helped, right? Whereas in our community, that just doesn't happen, or it hasn't happened to a big enough degree. So I then found someone who could make an app, right? And then I also I basically called 60 people and said, you're doing all right for yourself. Would you be interested in giving back to younger people who, maybe over the age of 18, if I trained you on how to be a mentor? Yeah. So what I did was I sent emails to these people, invited them to a meeting, and out of 60 people, 57 turned up on the day.
Wow.
So it shows there's an appetite,
Yes.
right, from our community to help our young people, right? But I didn't want to just keep it at our community, but I thought, let's get the app working first. Let's start making it work and, people get success stories. Then after that, I'll open it up even further, maybe to people with disabilities who aren't getting what they need, people with mental health problems who aren't getting what they need. So it's really like a Noah's Ark, for want of a better phrase, where you get people who are being mentored by people who really want to give back, right?
Yeah.
So we still are certifying mentors and attracting mentees. And then I really wanted to put my money where my mouth is. So Tony and I, my business partner Tony, we're paying for this. We're just using our own money. We've already paid the tax on our salary, and then we're putting the money into this. So it's literally just using our own money, right? And it's amazing. We've also decided to get interns to run the business, right? So very often the interns turn up, they're delighted that they're working for a big company for a couple of months. They get something nice on their CV, and the big boss says, go and make the coffee and just sit in the corner and don't annoy us, right? And then they put something on their CV and it helps them get a job. Well, we've decided that the 4 interns that we have been given job titles. They're running the business under our direction. So we're not exploiting them. We're not making them just make the tea. They are literally running the business, right? So by the time they finish, and we've given them the option at the end, if at the end of the time, when the app is really exploded, because it has, but explosions can be much bigger, right? So when it's really exploded, then they have the choice of either having a job and being on the leadership team, or using the experience to get a job elsewhere with mine and Tony's references, right? So hopefully that gives you an idea of the plan, what we're trying to do, because and how can I put this? What I'm finding is that I'm using the cards to match higher. So, for example, yesterday I had an ex-Premier League footballer who's a defender. He was at a charity do with me, right? And we both have written books. So we had a chat, swap books, right? He played for Chelsea, right? And England, right? So this isn't some kind of guy who played in a small league. This is right? And so then I was like, we met for a cup of coffee, he said, I liked you. I don't know why, you got good energy, blah, 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 And so and I was like, yeah, you're all right too. And so we kind of connected. And then I said, I'll tell you what, because he wants to do something very similar, but he wants to help people with financial literacy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right? Young people don't, even in Switzerland, I'm sure at school, you don't learn how to run a bank, get a mortgage, all these kind of things, right? So he wants to teach young people that, right? So then I've started connecting him with other people. And in fact, I got him to talk yesterday to our team at OTD.
Yeah.
right? So there's posts about all of that as well. So now I've realized what the manifestation type thing has helped me with this app has realized that it's not about individuals anymore. It's about communities. And it's about building communities and collaborating with each other. That is the key thing. So, I mean, you know, the other day you were doing a little bit of work for this company who I recommended you to.
Yes.
And now, because of you and your performance, they've asked that company, can we do more stuff in different markets? Have you got other people? And they've come back to us going, we haven't got anybody. And I could have said, oh well, good luck. But I didn't. I said, okay, let's talk to my business and see if we can collaborate. And our finance lady said, yeah, we've done this loads of times with other training businesses. And you could see how relieved they were. But it means that they will now, if you think about the 4 C's, they've made a commitment to do what they were supposed they're going to do with this business, right?
Yes.
They had the courage to call us, right? And now, as a result of that, we've appointed a project manager to help them. So they will now improve their capability.
Yes.
So the next time somebody comes to them, they'll be confident that they can do it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So this for me is manifestation isn't just sitting at home, you know, wishing in your pants, you know, wishing that you have clothes, right? Because it's not going to happen. There's a number of steps you need to do. So for me, first, make sure it's balanced and it's linked to those 4 conditions of well-formed outcomes, stated in the positive, making sure it's initiated and maintained by you as an individual, making sure that it's ecological, so you're not stepping on people to achieve your outcome. And as you said earlier, Michel, it's all about making sure that when you visualize, it's all the senses, not just seeing. So once you've done that, with each of your goals in that wheel of life, and you've written it as if it's already happened, and you do that as a ritual every day, I've never missed one in 20 years, right? So I carry the cards around with me everywhere, right? So they're normally by my bedside when I'm at home, but if I'm traveling, they go in a specific pouch in my rucksack, right? And irrespective of where I am, every morning, and this.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
So there was one thing I learned from Richard years ago, and it was a video that he was doing, and someone asked him about strategies for business. And he basically said, and I totally agree with it as well, is that very often people do things according to their mood. So this brings us back to why I'm always happy, right?
Yes.
So, you know, one day they do stuff, next day they don't. One day they do this, next day they don't. One day they do, and I don't do that. What I do is I do a little bit each day, every day, right? And then because you cannot run a business, you know, oh, today I'm not in a good mood. So that's when you miss all the great customers.
Yeah.
Right? So, you know, think about it. When you go in a shop sometimes and you walk in, you are going to buy something. And then you look at the people in the shop and they look at you or they don't look at you. Where was I? I was at a pub. It was for a stag do. And I travelled all the way up. I travelled 3.5 hours on the train. And I was meeting these guys in this pub. I walked into the pub. Nobody served me for 4 minutes. I counted. Now, I can tell you now, if that pub closes down in a year or 2 years' time, you know why.
Yeah.
Right? Now, I'm sure most people, if they go to a shop and they have to wait that long to be served, they're not going to stay in the shop, right? These people did not look happy. They looked hassled. They looked like they didn't want to serve any more customers. What a pain, you know. And yet every pint of beer they're selling is going back to their salary, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And I wondered why the pub was quite empty.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, so for me, this is why I think it's not just important to be in a good state. It's important to build that state all the time and have tools and mechanisms to keep you there. Because if you don't, then you could miss out on opportunities when they come.
Of course.
And
I'm sorry, you're not letting it to giving it to chance. And
No,
just
no.
one thing that I think that you do in your cards is you put a date,
Yes.
if I understood correctly.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's
yeah.
not just
Yeah.
the four well-formed outcomes.
No.
It's the by when do you
Yes. Yeah.
do you want it, even if you are saying it in a
In the
past
past.
tense?
Yeah, it's December 2026, and what an amazing month it's been. This has happened, that's happened, this has happened, and that's happened. And I feel fantastic about it. You
Yeah.
know? So you're playing, but you're creating a timeline, aren't you, with
Yeah.
language, right?
Yeah.
But it's also an act as if pattern at the same time for the
You are
enemy.
connecting it.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
it touches your
Yes.
timeline.
Absolutely. So it's like you are literally transported to that moment in your timeline and you feel it. Woo! And then, because it's never a bad feeling, right? So, and then it's like, woo! So then if you read 27, 28, or 30 of those, it's like doing 30 press ups, right?
Yeah.
If you do one press up, but if you do 30, after 6 months, you'll start to see a triangle shape here, right? As long as you don't eat donuts, to the same level,
Yeah.
So, so that really does help in terms of manifestation.
Yeah. So you're talking about the mood, and so there's always this paradox between motivation and discipline. So I guess it's very much related to that, right?
Completely. I
Yeah.
mean, and it's really interesting because I think I probably should have been in the army all my career, because I don't have every day I get up and I go running. I mean, like today, we went to stay at a friend's house. I've only done 7,400 steps. So you can guess what I'm going to do after we've finished, right? I'm going for a walk, right? To hit my numbers, right? Because I've hit my numbers consistently for about 4 years and not missed it. So it's like, so there's the discipline and there's the motivation. But it's really funny. I don't know about you, but once you've done something, don't you feel great?
Yeah.
So I do the toughest things in the day, the earliest I can.
Yes.
So I can tell you, I don't like running, right? And it sounds ridiculous. So I run 4 kilometers every day, right? I never liked long distance running. I was fit enough to do it, but I wasn't really the shape. I was the shape of a sprinter. So I loved 1 and 200 meters, maybe 400 but maybe 1 and 200 meters. So the idea of doing 4 kilometers, it's just crazy. But it's love. I love it because what it does is I get an endorphin rush as soon as I've finished. And then I do 30 pull-ups. I have this pull-ups machine, so I do that. And after running 4 kilometers, probably if I did that 2 years ago, I would not be able to do 1 pull-up, right?
Yeah.
But again, this is what you're talking about here, Michel. So what happens is it's the motivation that's pulling me, and it's the anticipation of the great feeling at the end of the thing that motivates me to do it, even when I don't feel like it.
Thank you. So it's I like it because if I make a connection with the app, with what we've done, with especially with what you're doing with kids, you were talking about your kids before, but when you look at the next generation,
Yeah.
what do you see in them that excites you, and what do you want to make possible for them through this app?
Yeah, I'm so pleased you said what you see that excites you. because very often I'm surrounded by people who say nothing but negative things about kids. And I'm like, hang on a minute, well, we've made this scenario. You know, we're the ones who've been parenting, you know, so it's not their fault, right? And they would be very quick to tell you that too, right?
Yeah.
Because they're so smart. So what I love about the young people is that they are super clever. So that's what I find, you know, and the challenge is they're clever, but then we haven't given them the tools always to make them confident, right? And when you say kids, you know, I would put up to the age of about 40 for that. And I say that with love because I consider it to be younger people, right? Not just children, but I'm talking about people over the age of 18 is what the app is for. But what excites me is if we've got this far with humanity, I kind of think this next generation is awesome, right? If we can give them the tools they need, I think a lot of good things are going to happen. They're a lot more focused on fairness than we ever were. I think they're a lot less individualistic, even though we're creating these tools to make them just be by themselves, right? They still want to talk to other people, right? And based on just those 4 young people who I did not know from a bar of soap, right? I feel great that, you know, these guys want to learn. I basically, I'm just watching what's going on, right? So I'm sending them little things like, can you write a 100-day plan, please? Here's an example of how to put a Gantt chart together. 2 days later, I've done my Gantt chart, Chris. Is this exactly what you're looking for? And then I might put it through AI and say, what else could be added onto my thoughts? And so they add a few more bits on, and then I send it back to them and they go, great, thanks for the feedback. I'm going to get on with it.
Yeah.
So I kind of think, I'm not suggesting that they're better at taking feedback from us, but I kind of think that if you align yourselves to them and help them believe that they're capable of doing stuff, the world's their oyster, really.
Yeah, absolutely. If a young person is listening to this, what would be your message to help them overcome any doubts that or limiting beliefs that they may have?
Well, I mean, obviously I talk to them one-to-one, but I mean, feel comfortable that you have limiting beliefs. I think that's an important thing. We're all human. Everybody has them. Even if you phoned up Donald Trump, he might have some limiting beliefs, or our new Prime Minister, he might have limiting beliefs. In fact, he talks about imposter syndrome from before. So everybody has them. Everyone has them. But it's a matter of, you know, learning a little bit about them and learning how to overcome them, you know. And I guess everyone at some point in their life has to show courage at some point, right? We can't always be like the guy in The Wizard of Oz, you know. There's the lion, isn't it? The lion that hasn't got courage, you know. So everyone is born with it somehow. And at some point we need to take the threshold. What we will do in baseline is help people overcome their limiting beliefs and make a clear path for them so they can visualize using all their senses to achieve the outcomes that they want to achieve. So that for me, and it's really interesting because those 4 people that we've got working with us now, I think the first meeting they were like, is this real? Are these guys actually going to help us? And then what we did was, as a convincer, we met one of them and then did the Zoom with that person. So then they're like, oh, these are real people, you know? And he arrived at the office and he was like, it's a real office. So sometimes you need to do some basic things to convince people. But once they're convinced, they're on their way now. So it's great.
Super.
And where can people find your app? So you said it's called.
Oh man, now you're asking the question, where can people find the app? Let me help you by just very quickly sharing the screen again. So, and doing this. So let me just do this. Oh, I don't want to upgrade now. Why do they do these things, right? All I want is an image. I can do it like this, don't worry. Right, so share screen. I clicked on the image and it said upgrade now. Right, so let me get rid of that wheel of life. Right, let's do that and that. And then hopefully you can see
We see the QR code.
the QR code, right? Just here. You can see everything else, but I'll just make the QR code a little bit bigger. Can you see that QR code?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. So that is basically a good way to download the app. Otherwise, just go on Baseline Mentoring, right? And when you go onto the website, it says download now. All right. So yeah, I'll show you what Baseline Mentoring looks like. Now you'll give me the opportunity to plug things, as they say in the UK, plug the business.
So is it open to anybody?
Yeah, of course it is. Because we you know, our aim isn't to make, I mean, after being excluded for a lot of things, you don't want to then exclude people.
Yeah.
It'd be hypocritical. So, and we have all people on our app. I mean, we've got a lot of people from all over the world who are on it now, right? From all backgrounds. Okay, so this is what it looks like, and you can see it says download now here, and there you go. So it's you can use it for Android and iOS users. So really simple and easy to download. So there we are. And then once you've downloaded, one of our team will be in touch. You know, we're getting this rhythm going very soon. So we're going to have a lovely process so that people can get involved and get going. So yeah, so you could be mentors, right?
Yes, of course.
Anybody can be a mentor, right? You know, and at some point I'd love to be able to do something on memory, Michelle. I've already got you on the app anyway. So for mind maps, Nathalie.
Of course.
So I've got you on that. There's two, part 1 and part 2 on mind maps. So yeah, Michelle, you would be awesome on there. Just we can do some memory stuff. Yeah.
Perfect.
So and the way we've set things up, we've done things in terms. So there are 4 key areas that we're helping people with. So one of them is career development. So we are providing on the app loads of materials for career development. So for example, I've got this framework which is all about company politics and how to navigate it in the workplace. And very often, people who look like me, we were taught by our parents, don't make any waves, keep your head down, just do your job, and one day you may get recognized, right? Well, I think we all know in companies, this is ridiculous because all of us have seen people who've got promoted and you think, how did they get promoted? So we talk about all of that and realize if we need to rise up, then we kind of need to understand how to navigate. So career development is one. Health and fitness is another. Tony is a Harley Street physiotherapist. He's one of the best in the world. He's got techniques named after him. And he's written loads of books on the spine, which is what his speciality is. So health is another important thing. And then the other thing is mindset and motivation. And then the final thing is financial literacy. So we're flooding it almost like White Valley or something like that, right? And just putting it all on there and at a very cheap price as well. So basically, I think it's around £10, €12 or something like that per person, because what we don't want to do is just end up with this kind of elitist app, right? What we want is anyone
Yes,
Mm,
is able to access these people and these materials. Does
yeah,
that make sense?
that's absolutely
perfect.
fantastic. Really.
And literally, Terry and I are just putting our own money in to do it.
Mm.
So there we go. So yeah, all good. So that's the app. Thank you for asking me about
Yeah.
that. Great.
So really, thank you very much, Chris. It's a real pleasure to share all this moment with you and talking about first manifestation. We talked about NLP. We talked about young people, about the app. It was very rich. So thank you very much for that.
It's an absolute pleasure. And I look forward to the next time.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Great.
Thank you for your light and your energy and for sharing it with us and with the world.
Yeah, yes. The world, we need to lighten up the world a bit, don't we?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for all the listeners, remember to subscribe, to just follow us, to follow also Chris on everything he's doing. It's very inspirational and hoping to see you very soon, Chris.
Thank you very much. I look forward to it.
Thank you very much. Bye bye.
Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.